Welcome to Harmonious Clan's live parenting coaching replay. We do our live coaching every Friday at 9:30 a.m. Pacific, 11:30 a.m. Central, and 12:30 p.m. Eastern on Facebook Live. Louisa will answer your questions, help you walk through your struggles, and provide you with strategies you can apply now to bring out the gem that is your child from that diamond in the rough. Hi there, good morning. This is Marco Kasha. I'm a co-founder of Harmonious Clan. And I know you're wondering, why am I here today instead of Louisa? Well, we have a topic today that's dear to my heart, and I'm going to be talking to you about that today. It's about one of the overlooked keys to effective parenting, because I can say that I, for one that is struggling with this and been working on it for a while with our kids, but getting ahead with some advice from Louisa and working through this on a daily basis. As you know, I'm Marco, and Louisa is my wife. We're Harmonious Clan. We have 6 children from 8 years down to 1 month. So we have quite a busy household and quite a busy clan here. We've been working on these strategies since our first child was born, dealing with all these issues from sensory processing, autism spectrum, executive functioning, you name it, we've dealt with it, just general child behavior. We see a lot of the sensory things. So we've been working on strategies since our 8-year-old was born to navigate ourselves through this process of being a parent, which we're all trying to be the most effective parents we can for our kids. So we're really have some practical strategies that we worked on. We've tested them with our kids, and we found things that work, and we're trying to share those with you. That's why we're here every week on Friday at 9:30 Pacific time and 12:30 p.m. East Coast time. But anyway, I'm going to be talking about today, like I said, the overlooked keys to effective parenting. We'll get to that in a minute. I wanted to give you some updates, excuse me, about what's been going on with Harmonious Clan. Louisa, who is normally doing these live things on Friday, she's going to be a guest on the Real Life Resilience podcast. That's going to be next week, January 25th. She'll be on a second time on February 1st. She did some interviews with Stacy Brookman on this podcast, a great podcast. You have to check it out. Again, it's Real Life Resilience podcast. She is going to be talking with Louisa about personal resiliency in one of the podcasts. And the second one is going to focus more on children and being a parent, and how do we teach our children to be resilient in life? Because as you know, being resilient is very important. If kids give up on things, they're not going to make it and not do well in school and in life in general. So it's going to be a good podcast to listen to. We will be loading that podcast on our website as well. Our podcasts are also available on Apple Podcasts and Stitcher Radio, and our website as well, harmoniousclan.com. So anyway, make sure you check those out. Another thing we have coming up, we are starting on Harmonious Clan on our Facebook page, a Facebook community group. That should be up next week. Give you an opportunity to get together with other parents that are in similar situations, have kids with behavior issues, or trying to navigate and be the most effective parent they can. So look out for that. We'll have updates on our Facebook page and on our website. If you go to our website, you can subscribe so you can get updates on when those things go live and get access to that group. We'll have community, so you'll be able to discuss things with other parents, get advice from Louisa, and also have some additional resources that will be available only within that group. So be looking for that. And also, we have a parenting assessment, a parenting effectiveness assessment that goes along with today's discussion too. So that's coming online next week. So a lot of new things coming up on our website. Make sure you stay connected with our website and our Facebook page to see what's going on, because you'll have a lot of opportunities for some of these new things. That assessment survey will be a great resource, I think, for parents to take a look at how they, how effective they are, and look at what areas they may be really strong in, what areas they be weak, and they can get information about, advice. You'll get some feedback from us on what kinds of things you can put into effect right away to strengthen those weak points and to grow your strong points. So make sure you check that out when it comes on, and stay, so like I said, subscribe so you get the updates. That's the best way. Okay, so for today, we're talking about what I consider to be one of the most overlooked keys to effective parenting. And this has to do with what's known as the ABCs of behavior. Now, we have some discussion about this. Louisa talks about this in her book, Outcast to Outstanding, the practical guide to understanding and addressing the drivers of your child behavior, because this has a lot to do with what drives your child's behavior. It's called the ABC of behavior. Now, these three letters ABC, they're they're acronym. It's an acronym, obviously. So the A stands for antecedent events, B for behavior, and C for consequences. And like I said, Louisa goes into that in some detail. We also talk about it on one of our podcasts. You can check that podcast out. It's called "Are You Teaching Your Child the Wrong Things?" In that podcast, it's a little different angle on what I'm talking about today, which talks about all three of these areas. Today, I'm focusing on consequences, which is the C. But check out our podcast on Apple Podcast, Stitcher, or on harmoniousclan.com. And there's a great download on there called the Ultimate Consequence Analysis Template. This goes along with the ABCs, gives you some tips and actually a nice table where you can work through and keep track of things with your child when you see certain behaviors, looking at antecedents. The antecedents are events that happen before the behavior, or what we call triggers as well. These kinds of triggers, you want to start tracking this with your children, because when you see a behavior, say, okay, what happened that led up to it? Because it's very important to understand what's driving the behavior with your kids, because that's the only way you're going to address these behaviors and get them corrected. So, but that worksheet is a great template. So make sure you go there when you go to the podcast. Again, go to our harmoniousclan.com/podcast. And on the podcast page, look for that podcast, Are You Teaching Your Child the Wrong Things? And there's a little download button on there. You can get that ultimate consequence analysis template, and you'll love it. It's great. So make sure you check that out as well. So as I said earlier, I wanted to cover this topic because I think in general, not to be stereotypical or whatever, or sexist, but dads in general, I think if you're anything like me, tend to be more lenient with your kids when you're with them than I think, at least than Louisa is with them. But I think in general, dads are more on the let's have fun and let's do this. But I wanted to talk about that because when we talk about consequences of behavior, it's important, to have fun with your kids. But keep in mind, to keep harmony in the behavior and in your household, you and your wife have to be on the same page. But there are two things you need to look at. When it comes to behaviors, there's a parent behavior and a child behavior, and you need to look at both of those to really be effective. And I think for dads, we need to look at it and think about what we're doing when our kids have certain behaviors, and the moms as well, because how we act as parents has a major impact on this ABC thing. So you have an antecedent, whatever triggers the behavior, the kid's doing the behavior, and now the consequences come. So there's how do you act when child has a certain inappropriate behavior? How do you act as a parent? How do you respond? Because children are very, very good at feeling these things out, and they can say, hey, when I do this, dad acts this way. When I do this, mom acts that way. So I'm do this when dad's around. And I think I see that a lot when our children are with me versus with my wife, Louisa. They act differently because a lot of that has to do with how we act as parents and what our consequences are to behavior. And so again, there's two sides of this: how the child's behaving, but most importantly, how are you behaving as a parent to be effective? So you have to be able to you have to be able to look at how you're acting when your child's doing certain behaviors. Like I said, Louisa gets on me about this with the kids and say, oh, you really need to be more on these things. And I've been working on this and I'm getting better at it. And it takes a lot of work to be an effective parent. But that's why I want to discuss it today, because it's definitely something that applies directly to me. And I think it applies to a lot more other people. We see this in, people that we talk to, friends and families and clients that Louisa works with. This comes up a lot because it's one of those things. I think if you think about it and think about what you're doing and realize the connection to the behavior, it's going to make a big difference in how effective you are as a parent. So it's really important. I think there's two different things. I think as parents, some parents tend to be what I call sit down parents, which are like, you tell your kid, do this, do that, while you're sitting down doing something else. And you're not there to reinforce what you're asking and to get the appropriate behavior. I think the other thing is like being busy parent, which we all are. And when you're a busy parent, sometimes you're trying to multitask and you're doing your work, say, or you got something you're doing for work or something you need to do in the house while the kids are playing, which is common. But you have to be able to switch off, I think, from what you're doing to get in there when you say something to your kids. Because if I'm sitting at my desk or at the counter and I'm working on my laptop and my kids are doing something and I hear something that's not supposed to be happening, and I say, hey, you need to stop that. But I don't get up and go over there and be an involved parent and actually go to them and say, hey, this is what you need to do, or help teach them what they need to do, it makes a big difference. So if you are that, you have to be able to, I think, move and not really try to multitask. So when you see something like that, especially, you need to be there. You can't be a sit-down parent and say, I asked you to do this. I asked you to do this. Because what kind of message does that send to your kid? If you're sitting there working on your laptop or your phone and you ask them to do something like go set the table for dinner, and the kid doesn't do it, your child doesn't do it, and you're sitting there and you keep working, and you say, again, I asked you to go put down the table, and maybe you say it 3 or 4 times and they don't do anything, they're sitting there thinking, okay, dad's busy, I don't have to do this. They're very smart. So I think you need to be able to say that the first time and be ready to go right away, and direct them to what you need to do. Say, did I ask you to do this? Please, let's go get this, and help them get started, because that makes a big difference in how they're going to respond to what you say to them. So I think that's definitely something you need to work on as a parent to be effective. It's an important thing. You can't be sitting back. You have to be involved. You have to get off your butt. You have to go and do something. I know it's difficult with so many things going on, but that being consistent, when you say something, they need to know, hey, when dad says this, I need to do it, because if I don't, he's going to come and make me do it anyway, which is, eventually they make that connection over time that's what they need to do. So it is very important. You have to have that instant feedback to get them to do what you say, and understand that when you say something, you mean it. And it seems like a simple thing, but it's one of those things I think we overlook and say, why are my kids behaving this way? Why are they not listening to me? That's one of the biggest issues I think parents have, and we hear it a lot. It's like, why? My kid just doesn't listen to me. So think about it. I mean, when you're in those situations, make a mental note to yourself, okay, what am I doing? What's my parent behavior like when my child's exhibiting this inappropriate behavior or not listening to what I say? That's a big part of it. That's definitely one of those things that is the most important things and most overlooked and very simple. It just takes time, to get yourself in the game, think about what's going on, and and get in there and get these things done so they know you mean what you say. Okay. And I think there's a couple of different scenarios with this that I wanted to talk about, because one of them, I think, is a situation I think everybody deals with. We see it a lot. We hear it a lot. It's what I call the dawdling child, right? So you have your child doing a task, whether it's homework or they're cleaning something up or put their toys away or whatever it is, and say it's homework, because that's, I think, one of the areas where if kids don't want to do it, they will tend to find any reason not to do their assignment, right? I mean, it's my pencil's not sharp enough, or I don't have a pencil, or I have to use the restroom, or I need a drink of water. I need this. I'm hungry, whatever. We hear a lot of these complaints, right? As parents, I know we do. And maybe they know like dinner's coming up, or you're going somewhere or something, and they know they have to be done by a certain time. And as a kid, you're thinking, well, how can I get out of this, right? So you're thinking, hey, maybe if I don't do this and I dawdle, when it comes time we have to leave, or we have to have dinner, we have to leave, and guess what? I don't have to do my homework, or I don't have to do whatever it was that mom or dad asked me. This is one of those areas where the consistency comes in, and your parent behavior comes in again with the consequence. So if their behavior is dawdle, so I don't have to get this undesirable task done, I want to do the desirable task. I want to go out, or I want to go play, or I want to go have dinner. They're going to do whatever they can to avoid doing that, right? So you need to be able to see through this, right? And you have to be consistent enough to make sure they're going to finish that no matter what happens. I mean, and of course, it's up to you as a parent to make sure that they are fed. There is a specific time for snack time and for restroom break and all that stuff before you get started, so that those don't become excuses for the child. Because if the child's sitting there and is knows that, hey, I can say I'm hungry because mom forgot to give me a snack, or dad forgot to give me a snack, then that gives them an opening. So you want to make sure that you're being consistent with these things, and that you have your times set up when you're going to do these things, because you don't want to give them an excuse to do that. Okay. And you want to be able to make sure and be consistent and follow through that they have to get it done. It doesn't matter if the rest of the family's eating dinner and they not. It seems mean, but they got to get that message that, hey, I told them they had to do this. They have a time set aside to do their homework, and then they have dinner. That the homework needs to be done. That task needs to be finished. So it's something you need to do. Again, it's this consistency. Remember the ABC. C is consequence, and in those consequences, you need to be consistent. What's your parent behavior like? Be consistent. The child makes that connection, and then that changes the behavior in the future. If they know enough times that, hey, I dawdle, I didn't get to eat dinner until everybody else was done, or maybe I didn't get to eat dinner, or I didn't get to go out and play with my siblings because I was dawdling. And now they start making this connection back to their behavior. And the next time you see the behavior get a little bit improved. I mean, it doesn't happen right away. It takes time, but you will see improvement. It's very important to be consistent with that and to make sure they can finish that task, that what they would consider an undesirable activity, to get it done when they're supposed to get it done. I mean, it's very, very important, and you will see a big difference over time in how they behave when they're assigned to do something, when they see that it's true. Mom's not going to let me off the hook. Dad's not going to let me off the hook. And again, this goes back to the dad and mom thing. Like I said, as a dad, right? Am I a little bit too lenient with that when I say, oh, okay, well, well, she needs to eat, let the child eat and don't let them finish. But that sends the wrong message, right? When you think about it, it sends them, okay, if I dawdle long enough, especially if dad's around, I'm going to get out of doing this right now. And that's not the right message you want to send your kid. It needs to be consistent. You need to talk to your spouse about it. You both need to be on the same page. You need to be able to do that and make that message consistent. So I think that applies in all these different scenarios, but it definitely is an important thing in like that dawdling situation, especially if you let them off the hook. They don't have to finish the task. Before you know it, they're thinking, every time I just do that, especially if it's dad that does that. And they, how kids are when they want something, right? They know which parent's going to say yes and which is going to say no, right? I don't think that happens just to us, but they're going to sit there and they're going to say, oh, I want to get this. I'm not going to ask mom. I'm going to ask dad, because he'll say yes, or he'll give in, right? And that's the other thing I want to lead up to is when kids give in, or you give in to a child's behavior, right? Because when you are say whatever it is, set your kid off. Again, is looking at the ABC, something happened. Their behavior is, I'm going to start whining because they're not getting what they want. Or maybe they're going to have a meltdown, or they're just going to cry really loudly, or they're just going to be annoying to you. And not that kids do that, but yes. I think it's important, especially in those situations, and this is the area especially where I struggle, because whining and stuff like that, you know how it grates on you, and you're just sitting there, like, after a while you're just like, oh, just make it stop, and you're trying to think, and it's a very, very difficult situation for you and for the child as well. But you have to, again, think about your parent behavior when they're doing an inappropriate behavior. What is it as a parent that I should do here? Because if they're whining and crying, and after 5 minutes, you just can't take it anymore, say, okay, here. And I know I'm guilty of doing this sometimes. Just think about that again from this ABC perspective. What if you just told your child? It's like, okay, there was an antecedent, meaning dad told me I cannot have my snack, say, or candy. Maybe she wanted a treat or something, he or she, and you said you can't have it. So that is the antecedent. It triggers the behavior, which is whine, which kids know how to do very well. So they start whining. Now they're whining and keep asking you and keep asking, and you keep saying no, or you keep interacting with them, or it's one of the things you don't want to do. You say, I said no, that's it. But they're keeping track of this. They're not, they're very smart. They're thinking about this. They're listening. They know if I keep saying this, I can see that it's aggravating dad or it's aggravating mom. And they know at some point, say it's 5 minutes or 10 minutes, they've been whining. And then finally you say, what, here, have it. I'm trying to get my work done, right? Which, we all have a lot of priorities going on, but think about that again. Now this child is thinking, okay, dad said no. I started whining. I whined for 10 minutes and then dad gave me the treat. What if you just taught your child, it's like, okay, my behavior is X, I get Y. Consequence. Again, so Maybe the next time they know I have to go at least 10 minutes because that's what happened last time. So they whine and whine and whine and whine. And if they get to 10 minutes, eventually you're going to give in because you get to the point where you just can't deal with it anymore. So think about these things. These are important. Again, it's a simple thing. And again, I think it's one of those things that gets overlooked as a key to how you can be more effective. You need to think about these kinds of things, and you need to be able to, hold out longer than they can. I know it's not an easy thing. It's a hard thing because kids can go and whine for a very long time. I mean, some of our kids are just really, really good at that. I mean, they can go for an hour sometimes, and it's very important to be consistent, hang in there, hold on longer than they can, because if you don't, you're really giving them the wrong feedback, and this is the wrong consequence, and they know what to do next time. But like I said, it's not an easy thing. It's very difficult. I struggle with it. I know, every parent has that, especially when you're out. You don't want to cause a scene. And I feel self-conscious about that a lot too, right? You're out somewhere, maybe you're at the grocery store or at church or whatever, and they ask for something, and what's the first thing you think about? Do I say no and then risk them causing a scene? Or do I say yes just to let them, so that they're not going to be causing a scene? That, again, if you're not being consistent, so say at home, you're always like that. No, I'm going to hold out and let them scream. I don't care. Nobody's going to hear them. But then you're out in a public place, and now you're thinking to yourself, and you get self-conscious, and you say, if I don't let her or him have this, is he going to go off? And if he goes off, what's going to happen? You get self-conscious. What are people going to think if you let him start screaming? But that's one of the very important points too, is when you're in that situation, if that time you say you're going to give it to him because you're going to give in, maybe he whines for a couple minutes. You're like, I don't want to cause a scene. Okay, here, have the lollipop. What have you just done? All that work you've been working on, the consequence, right? Behavior and the consequence, behavior consequence is the same all of a sudden. Oh, but when we're at church or we're outside, or we're at the grocery store, or we're wherever, we're at the park, if I do that, dad or mom is not going to act the same way. They know this. They're smart. Like I said, they're going to figure it out. So it's very important to be consistent no matter where you are, no matter what you're doing at home, when you're out. And if they start screaming, hey, kids do that, it's not that you're a bad parent. You're being an effective parent. You're trying to teach your child the right thing. Remove them from the situation, get them somewhere else, get them to your car, wherever you need to do. But, it's very easy to get self-conscious about that and say, I'm not going to do that now because I don't want other people to see them yelling and screaming and think I'm not a good parent. It's not true. You are a good parent because you're doing it. And that's what you need to do to be an effective parent. And I know I've talked about a couple examples here, like on the when they have inappropriate behavior. But think about it too, when they have what we call appropriate behavior or positive behavior, or they do something that you've been working on for a long time, like they didn't whine, or they restrained themselves from taking a toy away from their brother or sister. What do you do in those situations? Are you making a big deal about it? If not, you need to, because when you're in those situations, say you're working on the behavior, there are two sides, right? Kids do right things. Kids do inappropriate things. When they do positive or appropriate behaviors, you need to be even bigger and over the top with your, with your response to them, right? It has to be a extremely rewarding experience for them, right? Because if they see that when they get attention when they do something wrong and this and that, and I get consequences and all that, when I do something good, mom or dad doesn't notice. Not a good situation to be in. You want to be making those situations where they're doing the positive behavior or the appropriate behavior be extremely rewarding. As a parent, you got to be, be animated and so happy for, oh, look what you did. You had, you were there. You could have taken that from your brother because you wanted it. But instead you talked to him nicely or you came to talk to me to help you. You did the right thing. That's got to be something that's very rewarding. You got to be very animated and very happy for them that they did the right thing. So they know that this is the kind of reward they get for this behavior. What is that consequence? Oh, mom and dad are really going to be praising me, and maybe I'm going to get a stamp. And these are things we do as well. There's other things you can do, stamps or stickers or whatever it is that motivates your child. We have a lot of system with stamps where we catch them doing these things. We give them a stamp or two, or depending how big of of a positive step it was. They might get 3 or 4 or 5, and every so often on their stamp page, they get rewards and they can claim them for prizes. So these are the kind of things you need to have on the positive side as well to teach them what kind of consequences they get for appropriate behaviors, because there are two sides of that coin, you know, the inappropriate and the appropriate. We want to be there and show them that the appropriate behaviors get the extremely rewarding rewards, mom and dad, a lot of praise. You know, they need to see that, because that feeds back into that ABC loop. Now they're going to think, okay, hey, when I did this, even though my brother did this or my sister did that, I acted this way. That's my behavior. So you had the A, what happened before, the B, the behavior that he did. And what was the consequence? You know, mom was just praising on me, and I got 5 stamps, and I got to get a prize, and I got to do something that I wouldn't normally get to do this time of the day because I did that right thing. That's so important as well with your child to, you know, to show them the positive side of their behaviors and what the consequences are like, because it's really important to address both sides of that for these ABCs. And I hope you see how this consequence in this ABC and your parent behavior is really one of those overlooked things. I mean, you may not think about it as a parent. We're all busy. We're trying to say, well, the child's doing this, the child's doing that, the child's behaving that way. Yes, they are, but how are you behaving as a parent, right? How do you be more effective? You need to take the time to analyze that. And when you're in those situations, just stop for a second and think, okay, what happened? What caused the behavior? This is the behavior that happened. But most importantly is, what was my reaction? What is the consequence of that behavior? It's a very important part of that feedback loop. So, you know, we can always focus on my child does this, my child doesn't do this, or, you know, child doesn't listen to me, but think about what is your part in that as a parent. What are you doing? What are you not doing? Are you sitting there working on your laptop when you tell them to do something and repeating it 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times, and they realize, hey, I don't have to do it when dad talks? That's the biggest complaint about my kid doesn't listen to me. Well, what are you doing to make them not listen to you? You know, you can blame the child, but, you know, as parents, we're responsible as well. We need to know that. We need to understand that. And we need to look at that consequence, look at our behavior, look inside. What are we doing? And again, that's ABC, the ABCs. When you look at the antecedents and the behaviors and all that, again, go, like I said, on our podcast, Are You Teaching Child the Wrong Things? There is that download available, the ultimate consequence analysis template. Go get it, download it. You'll see how you can help apply that and keep track of it. And it's basically like keeping a log. Okay, this behavior happened. What happened right before? What was the consequence? What did I do as a parent? What did he do as a consequence of that? Without tracking it, you're not going to be able to improve it. That's one of the important things. So make sure you go to harmoniousclan.com/podcast. Look for our podcast, Are You Teaching Your Child the Wrong Thing? And there's that ultimate consequence analysis template download. It says get your download. You can take a look at that. And don't forget, Louisa is going to be on the Real Life Resilience podcast next Thursday, the 25th of January. And also on February 1st, she was interviewed by Stacy Brookman, talk about resilience in life. You'll hear her story about the Harmonious Clan and such. I think is how we started that, because of the resiliency. She had the personal resiliency, and also the second podcast about teaching your child to be resilient in life. It's a very important skill for your children to be resilient when things go wrong, because as we know, things go wrong all the time in life. We need to be able to bounce back, and we have a download for that will be available when that podcast goes live as well. We'll try to get that podcast on our website as well, and the download available so that you can check those out, because resiliency is just as important as what we're talking about today. So I'm glad you took the time to listen today. It was fun for me to be here and talk a little bit. Hope you get to know me a little bit better. Like I said, Louisa and I are the co-founders of Harmonious Clan. We're here to bring you, some strategies based on our experience. Our website, our Facebook, we're there. We're also on Twitter. So follow us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, subscribe on our website so that you can get updates about when these new things come out that I mentioned, the parenting effectiveness assessment, and also the Facebook, the Harmonious Clan Facebook community group that we'll have. It's some good things coming up. We're going to have some new podcasts coming up as well. And don't forget to catch Louisa next week, same time, 9:30 Pacific, 12:30 p.m. on the East Coast. I hope you have a great week, and I hope you take some of this stuff to heart that we talked about today, and hope you get on your path to being a more effective parent. Thanks. This is Marco saying goodbye, and have a great week. Thank you.